Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Labour has accused Theresa May and her ministers of a cover-up after she once again refused to confirm or deny reports that during the last test of Britain's nuclear deterrent, a missile had veered off course. The Defence Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, who faced urgent questions in the Commons, said he would not comment on operational details. As our political editor Laura Koonsberg reports, the test occurred last June, just before MPs voted to renew Britain's independent nuclear defence capability.
Set condition 1SQ for weapon system readiness test.
Aye, aye, sir.
Pressing the nuclear button.
Action stations.
A process that's practiced and practiced. The hope it never happens for real.
Weapon system in condition 1SQ.
But just before the Prime Minister took charge, a test like this, it seems, did not go according to plan. But Theresa May yesterday refused to say if she had known.
Prime Minister, did you know?
There are tests that take place all the time regularly for our nuclear deterrence. What we were talking about in that debate that took place was about
I'm not going to get an answer to this.
It matters because the trial appears to have gone wrong just weeks before her new government asked MPs to approve billions of pounds to keep the weapons.
We're launching this strategy here.
Having failed to answer yesterday, today on a cabinet visit, the Prime Minister had to admit she did know.
I'm regularly briefed on national security issues. I was briefed on the successful certification of HMS Vengeance and her crew. We don't comment on the operational details for national security reasons.
This spectacular misfire in the late 80s of an American Trident missile is rare. The vast majority of tests have been successful.
Order! Urgent question.
And it's not clear what went wrong with this weapons trial. But Labour has found a lot wrong with the government's handling of the facts.
At the heart of this issue is a worrying lack of transparency and a Prime Minister who has chosen to cover up a serious incident rather than coming clean with the British public. This House, and more importantly the British public, deserve better.
The details of the demonstration and shakedown operation I am not going to discuss publicly on the floor of this House.
We simply want to know, was this test successful or not?
Should we believe the White House official who, while we've been sitting here debating, has confirmed to CNN that the missile did auto self-destruct off the coast of Florida?
Once stories get out there that a missile may have failed, isn't it better to be quite frank about it?
There are always some things that government wants to keep from MPs and the rest of us. But this time, Theresa May's hope of staying quiet seems to have backfired. The most straightforward questions, like who knew what, can be the trickiest of all. The political arguments over whether we need nuclear weapons are controversial enough. A fight over whether they work is a battle ministers would rather not have. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Westminster.
And our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale is at the Ministry of Defence for us. Jonathan, there are suggestions tonight that the British Parliament and public are being kept in the dark while some people abroad know the details.
Well, the fact is, George, that these tests are publicised in advance in the sense that aviation shipping are warned to avoid hazard areas. Even in the past, Russian spy ships have observed them from a distance. So it is strange that the British public find out about this test when they read in the media that something went wrong. Now, Michael Fallon in the Commons was again refusing to confirm that something did go wrong, citing national security reasons. He'd only confirm that the actual launch, the certification of the boat HMS Vengeance, the submarine, was a success. That said, there are problems with this line, and the first is that in the past the MOD has publicised these tests when they've been a success. Why not this time? Was it because of that crucial Commons vote on renewing the Trident missile system? The other problem is, of course, now in Washington we're hearing from unnamed officials that there was a failure in this test. It seems strange that while Michael Fallon says this is an independent British nuclear deterrent that the government can't comment, but US officials, it appears, can.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much.
Well, while the media in America are being presented with alternative facts by the White House, it's been all but impossible in the House of Commons to get any facts at all about what went wrong in our nuclear deterrent system last summer. The Defence Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, said he wouldn't divulge operational details about reports a missile went off course for reasons of national security. But as he spoke, the broadcaster CNN quoted a US official being rather more forthcoming. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, reports.
There have been 5 UK Trident test firings this century, 4 of them publicised with official footage and press releases, but not the test last June. That's because after the missile was fired, an error was detected. Instead of heading off on the planned course from the coast of Florida to the coast of Africa, the missile self-destructed. Theresa May was at a cabinet meeting in Warrington this morning. Yesterday she repeatedly ducked questions about when she knew about the failed Trident test. Today she admitted she was briefed on the test but wasn't saying what she'd been told.
Why won't you just admit whether you knew or not?
Well, I have just said that I was briefed on the certification of HMS Vengeance and her crew.
So you did know?
We don't speak about operational details on national security reasons. What I said yesterday is what I have just said to you.
Theresa May argued for the renewal of Britain's fleet of submarines that carry Trident missiles in her first speech in the Commons as Prime Minister, not long after the accident in the Atlantic.
Secretary of State for Defence will make a statement.
In the Commons today, the Defence Secretary said the Prime Minister had known at the time what had gone wrong off the coast of Florida.
The previous Prime Minister and this Prime Minister were of course informed about the maintenance of the nuclear deterrent and the outcome of the test and the successful return of HMS Vengeance to the operational cycle.
The Defence Secretary said the test was a success because it was assessing whether the submarine refit and the new crew were functioning, not whether the actual missile was up to scratch.
Despite the Secretary of State's refusal to clarify, it is commonly understood that the missile went the wrong way. Now, I'm no expert, but that strikes me as a major flaw, and friendly fire with a nuclear weapon is not exactly what the Secretary of State might be looking for. Can the Secretary of State at least tell us whether the new Trident missiles will have better guidance systems?
Secretary of State! Not able to confirm the speculation in which the Honourable Lady is indulging about the route of the missile that was fired.
If things go wrong, the last thing you do is give succour to the enemy by telling them that is the case.
Tory MPs lined up to insist secrecy over a national security matter was essential. Opponents accused the government of a cover-up. Halfway through the statement, CNN reported that a US defence official was happily confirming the missile failure that the government here was refusing to talk about.
It has become apparent throughout this debate that there are US officials who are now briefing more detail than has been given by the Secretary of State today.
Sir Michael Fallon said he might consider talking to the Defence Select Committee in private about what happened off the coast of Florida, but they shouldn't expect him to add to their sum of knowledge.
So as MPs protest they're being left in the dark about Trident, what went wrong and can we still rely on our nuclear deterrent? Our science editor Tom Clark reports.
Missile away.
We know Trident can work. The Royal Navy has conducted 4 successful tests in 15 years. The US 160 since the weapon was developed in the late 80s. But how often does it go wrong, and why?
1, 0, missile away.
In the early days, there was a run of failures. This 1989 test, the 4th dud out of 20. Things spiralling out of control before commanders activated the self-destruct mechanism. Judging the reliability of the submarine deterrent is a problem for MPs, as not all malfunctions are reported in the interests of national security. Today, US officials confirmed the Royal Navy Trident test of June last year failed after onboard software detected a problem. It sent the missile away from its intended target in the North Atlantic and automatically self-destructed over the sea.
Based on the information we have at the moment, it's reasonable to assume these missiles will continue to be reliable, but much depends on whether the Ministry of Defence has successfully identified what went wrong in this particular test and is taking remedial action in relation to that problem. And of course, without knowing what the problem was, we don't know whether that's the case.
The system is highly complex. At 60 tonnes, a Trident missile needs a jet of superheated steam to blow it out of a submerged submarine. Then it essentially becomes a space rocket. A first stage takes the missile out of the atmosphere. A second, then a third rocket motor carries the space-based platform carrying the warheads over its target. It's from here that 8 to 12 individual Trident warheads head to Earth. Each one is then programmed to detonate over its target with 5 times more power than the bomb dropped on Nagasaki. Parliament's £40 billion Trident decision was about replacing the Vanguard subs that carry the weapon. But from what we now know, it was the American-made missile that failed last year. Despite maintenance, the missiles and their warheads are ageing. Only rigorous testing at £17 million a shot can prove the deterrent works first time, which is the only time you'd need it.
Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat, who served in the British Army and as the military assistant to the Chief of Defence Staff, and also by the Labour MP and former Defence Minister Kevin Jones. Kevin Jones first. The Defence Secretary said this was a matter of national security not to release any more details. I mean, he's got a point, hasn't he?
Well, that would have been OK if they hadn't, in 2012, done a full briefing on it, given extracts, extensive extracts to a book produced by Peter Hennessy, which gives a full report on the missile tests. So therefore, to turn around and say I wouldn't even ask a question on it today, you know, rings a bit hollow.
Tom Tugendhat, that is the point, isn't it? The 4 previous ones, which were successful, there were press releases, there were videos, the whole... It does make you a little bit suspicious, doesn't it?
I think you've got to remember what was being tested here. What was being tested on the UK side was the operational capability of the Vanguard-class submarine, Her Majesty's Vengeance in this case, and that was proved to work. That was proved to work after the test. Yes, OK, wasn't entirely successful with the missile.
A minor detail.
But that is what you test for. That is exactly why you test, and then it was sent to sea operationally capable.
Number 10 says it's not. Operation is successful.
Well, I agree with Tom that you actually test the submarine, but you also test with the missile. That's the reason why you fire it. And on this occasion, it didn't work. And what's been made worse by this, I think, is Michael O'Fallon completely refused today to answer any questions hiding behind security. Yet in the United States, there are briefings going on about this.
That is the point, isn't it? It's the cover-up, or alleged cover-up, that's the problem here. I mean, if they were open about what had gone wrong, it would be fine. The fact is, Russia probably knew about this test. CNN's been briefed by the American officials. You know, everybody seems to know, apart from British MPs.
Well, I'm not sure that's entirely fair. The reality, as Kevin knows very well from his own time in government, is the British government doesn't talk much about nuclear operations, doesn't talk about special forces, doesn't talk about intelligence operations.
So why did it talk in the past about these?
Well, I would argue that those were errors, but what it did in the past was chose certain bits of footage and certain aspects to talk about, and obviously all aspects of military operations are used operationally, and therefore advertising capability is certainly a military purpose, and I think we can all understand why one would not want to advertise areas where it wasn't entirely perfect, particularly when you're working on the improvements.
I mean, I know you're not a unilateralist, but I mean, there are plenty on your benches. Michael Gove, the former cabinet minister, says to hear unilateralists complaining about a Trident malfunction is like, quote, eunuchs complaining about Viagra.
Well, no, I actually support and would and continue to support the independent nuclear deterrent. I voted for it last year, and I don't think this would...
So you're not a eunuch?
Certainly not. But I think this would not have changed the vote last year. But what it does do, I think it just
You
adds...
accept that?
I don't think it would. But what it adds to is this idea of secrecy. And I think the problem is anything that detracts from the real reason why we need this, and the important reasons why it is important for our defence, I think have done damage today.
It is deeply unfortunate that this information wasn't out there before the vote, isn't it? Even if, as Kevin accepts, it didn't change anything.
Look, I don't think it would have made any real difference to the vote. Kevin's absolutely right. And Kevin has been a very impressive advocate of nuclear deterrent for many, many years, and has explained in numerous ways and given some very fine speeches, actually, on the importance of the deterrence to Britain's military capability. So I'm absolutely in agreement with him and couldn't argue differently.
But the fact that this did not perform as it was expected to raises doubts among those who have doubts already.
Well, that assumes that we know why it didn't perform, and neither Kevin nor I do.
Know, isn't it?
Well, no, it's why the government needs to know, why the Royal Navy needs to know, and why the missiles engineers need to know. It's not why you and I need to know.
We
I'm
just
afraid,
take
Kathy.
their word for it.
Well, the reality is, Kathy, that military secrets are secret for a purpose, and that is to prevent the enemy being able to defeat our weapon systems. And this is a phenomenally complex weapon system. Giving away exactly what went wrong and how and why would be one aspect in allowing the enemy to potentially defeat it.
You don't need to worry your pretty little head about it. The government's in control, trust the government.
But no one was suggesting that today, that they wanted classified information. What they wanted was just some indication that what had gone wrong was actually, one, recognised, first of all, and secondly, that things would be put right to make sure that this future tests would be successful. But just to hide behind and say, I'm not going to comment whatsoever, even though in the past they've put information out in the public domain around these nuclear tests, is just nonsense.
Isn't this part of a broader culture of secrecy around Number 10? Theresa May's not very good at being transparent.
No, I wouldn't agree with that at all. I think Theresa May has just given one of the most transparent speeches a Prime Minister has given, which she gave last Tuesday in explaining exactly what we're aiming for in the European Union. She has been extremely open, as you'll remember, as Home Secretary, in crime figures. She was extremely clear in the policies that she was taking towards national security, including getting rid of Abu Qatada from this country. She has been extremely open where it is appropriate to be so. What we're now talking about, and Kevin knows this very well, is a very, very technical operation that where you advertise the small elements is where you give away the detail.
Kevin Jones, Tom Tinghart, thank you very much for joining me.
I've been getting